Hello friends, my name is Behroz and welcome to my channel where I share with you tips, tricks that I read, learn and apply in order to become my best version. At your workplace, how many times a meeting owner or a presenter has opened up the floor to questions and inputs? This could be a management town hall. Let's say the management of the company is sharing the company's performance or plans for the coming years, a business meeting for info sharing, or just a normal team meeting. This is your chance to contribute, plug in your participation, show the group that you were listening, that you're here to add value, and so on and so forth. Net, it is your time to shine and look good. Now, while you do have a question or input that you want to ask or share, however, you struggle to be the first one to raise your hand and contribute. Because following are the key things going on in your mind. You may attract unnecessary attention if you go first. You're nervous to break the silence. You fear that your inputs and questions may not be the best versus what others are holding on to in the room. You're not sure if it's very smart or an intelligent input or a question that you're about to ask or share. Earlier in my career, I would just purely end up playing safe and avoid going first or otherwise asking my question altogether. Here is $1 million advice. Always be the first to raise your hand to ask that question or share in your input. Now, this may sound intimidating, especially if you are to contribute in front of a big crowd or in front of senior leadership. Let me share with you 4 convincing arguments as to why this is the best approach and poised to make you look good. Number 1, there is a high risk that someone else may have a similar question or may be about to make a similar contribution. Let's say you're in a room where the presenter has downloaded his or her presentation and has opened up the room for Q&A, inputs and reflections. Now you have thought of something to ask, something to input. There is a good chance that others in your group have a similar question or are about to make a similar input in that meeting. If you don't go first, you lose the chance of inputting or contributing with your best input or your best question. Rather, if you wait to go later and someone comes and makes the same point or asks the same question, that means in order for you to mark in your contribution or your participation, now you will have to come up with a new input or a new question altogether. This is just a tough place to be because now you have very less time to come up with a new input or a new question that you can contribute with. And chances are that the point that you will think of now will not be as good as the point that you've already or initially thought of, which was taken away by someone else. Since you gave more time and thought to the first input that you wanted to make versus the input that you are now coming up with in rush, just to purely fill in the gap. Hence, be the first to fire off with your input and question before you let anyone else ask the same question or make the same contribution. Second benefit of going first is that you're able to move into listening mode very early in the session. It is best to offload the input or the question that you have in your mind as soon as possible so you can get into the listening mode. I learned it recently when I started taking improv lessons. Now, side note, during these improv classes, I am totally out of my comfort zone, given I am a big introvert, and that was one of the motivations for me to take improv lessons. I will be making a separate video on what I learned from improv lessons and will leave the link of that video above. So in the earlier improv sessions, when the instructor would ask the students to volunteer and come up and enact the scene first, I would just hold back, stand back, and would go in the end. Purely out of 1, the fear of being the first one to go, and second, giving myself, or let's say buying myself time in order to think through my scene as against coming up with my improvised scene on the spot, which by the way is the sole purpose of improv, where you are supposed to come up with a scene or a situation on the spot. And I was avoiding that by going in the end. That is by not volunteering to be the first, rather keeping myself towards the end. I was bypassing that learning process altogether. Nevertheless, I soon realized that from the time the first volunteer started their act to the time I came on the stage for my turn, I was completely in my own head, not listening or observing anything, rather just thinking about my own scene all the time and being engaged in perfecting that scene in my head, and hence not being able to listen, enjoy or learn anything from the observation or the critique coming from the instructor. This is exactly what happens when I'm sitting with a question or input in my mind during a meeting. Till I've asked that question, I've blocked myself from listening to anyone else because I have that question or input in my mind and I'm just thinking or rehearsing how I will say that input, and during this time I've blocked from listening anyone else who's talking in the room. The third benefit is taking off the pressure. Coming back to the improv lessons example, another challenge that I was faced during my lessons on improv was that I would feel extreme pressure and anxiety till the time I've delivered my scene. This is primarily because I am constantly in a thinking mode, being anxious and thinking about my turn, just as I would be anxious and thinking about the question or the input that I want to ask or contribute in a particular meeting. And the key source of this anxiety is the fact that I am not present in the moment, and hence not enjoying the scenes being presented and enacted in front of me by others. The fourth and the last benefit of going first is a softer judgment by others who are present in the room for the contribution that you're making. Let me explain what I mean. Now, as folks continue to participate while you are holding on to your question or to your input, the judgment for the value of contribution coming from others starts to rise. That is the judgment that other people are making on the contribution coming from different people. Because now others are contributing and the level of discussion has started to rise and elevate. Plus, as everyone starts to offload their contribution, they start to get into the listening mode. And now they're paying more attention to the contribution being made by others. And hence, they are in a judgment mode. They are judging the contribution coming from the ones who are going after them. And hence, the expectations are growing. And the chances are the expectations will max out by the time you will go in the end and get a chance to make your contribution. In contrast to that, someone going first doesn't have that comparison set created already in the room. Plus, they get the points and respect for bravery for going first, while anyone going later has now a point of comparison and doesn't get the points out of compassion for being brave. This is more so relevant if your contribution is average, given you can still earn some points by going first with an average contribution versus going last with an average contribution. That is to say, if you're going last, then your contribution should be of superb quality. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully this video was helpful for you to now realize that how important it is for you to go and raise your hand first to ask that question or input that you are thinking in your head. Thank you.